Hello, welcome back to my kitchen. Today we're going to be answering a question that I brought up in my last video, which if you haven't seen it yet, go watch it. But the question is, would a more complicated, like fancy fudge recipe be so superior to the foolproof fudge that we made last week that any extra work, extra ingredients, stuff like that, just kind of you're like, it doesn't matter, we're doing this recipe because it's just that much better. And to kind of accomplish this goal, I found the dynamic duo of complicated but typically amazing food is Serious Eats and Alton Brown. So it's an Alton Brown recipe that's being hosted on the Serious Eat website. If you don't know who either one of them are, you should, because Alton Brown's like the Bill Nye of food is kind of what I call him. I'm sure other people call him. I probably didn't make that up myself. But he just explains things so well. Like there's the show Good Eats. Highly recommend going to watch that. And then the Serious Eats website, any recipe that you will find on there typically has paragraphs or pages of info before the actual recipe, not telling you their life story of like, oh, I was hiking through the mountains and then I saw a sunrise and it made me want scrambled eggs. Their info is like, this is the science behind why you're doing specific steps, what they're doing to the food that you're making, and like how it all gets incorporated together. Great resources if you want to like learn kind of the nitty-gritty science aspect of what cooking is. Highly recommend them, but definitely kind of more complex. So if you're trying to actually execute one of those recipes, it's going to be a little bit more difficult. So just kind of keep that in mind. I mean, they explain it, so I feel like anybody can do that. It's just going to be a little bit more stressful. So before me, I have the two fudges already completed, and obviously it's A for Alton, or was it B for Brown? Oh crap. But while I sort out which one's which, why don't we run through the ingredients and then get into cooking? Sugar, unsweetened chocolate, butter, half and half, corn syrup, and vanilla extract. In a heavy bottom saucepan, we're going to combine the chocolate, the sugar, the half and half, corn syrup, and then half of the butter. We're going to stir that all up with a wooden spoon on medium heat until the sugar dissolves and the chocolate fully melts. Increase the heat and let it come to a boil without stirring. Reduce the heat to medium-low, cover the pan, and let it cook for 3 minutes. So remove the cover, and we're going to attach a candy thermometer just like to the side of the saucepan, and then let it get to the softball temp, which is 235. The recipe says 234, but I assume they meant 235, and I don't think that 1 degree is going to cause any issues. Now, remove from heat, add the other half of the butter, and then do not stir while we let it cool down for 10 minutes or until it reaches 130. So mine did not drop in temp that quick. I let it go for an extra 20 minutes and it's still at 190. So I'm just gonna say heck with it and go on to the next step. Now add in the vanilla and then stir until it's well mixed, so the color should go from kind of a shiny appearance to a matte appearance. And this might take you 15 to 20 minutes, so it's gonna be a bit of an arm workout. And now pour the fudge into a parchment lined 8x8 and then pop that in the fridge for like 3 to 4 hours. And now that it's fully cooled, pull it from the fridge, cut it up into whatever bite-sized pieces you want, and we're good to go. Before we get into the taste test, I want to make a few comments because this definitely had some bumps along the road of making this. I don't know if you noticed in the steps, the texture seems a bit off. And then when I was cutting it, it's fairly crumbly. So that leads me to believe that the kind of crystal structure that we were going for was not accomplished. But kind of few comments of where I could have improved my attempt, I'm going to make just so like for your edification. And then also hopefully this kind of gives you a don't follow in my footsteps kind of a deal. So the first one is I should have watched a video of like Alton Brown making this. because I'm assuming that there's probably one online of like him on TV or something someplace having made this, and that would have greatly helped with like the little like nuanced steps that happen of like don't stir it for, you know, this set period of time. It should hit these temperatures, like how firm are those temperatures? Because like there's like the one step of 10 minutes or 130 means you wait 10 minutes or it hits 130. And if it hits 10 minutes and it's still at like 200 degrees, you're good to go. Granted, I'm not such a stickler for logic. I did wait an extra, I can't remember if it's 10 or 20 minutes now. I'll have to look back at the tapes because I just kind of kept adding time. Regardless, it only got to 190. And that leads into the next one is read the comments. These recipes have comments. This one specifically has comments. And one of those comments was almost exactly what happened to me, where the person said that they started stirring before it cooled off completely because they waited like, you know, X amount of minutes and they're like, I'm just going to start going. And then it turned out grainy and crumbly, which is like exactly what I experienced. So if I had read that, I would have seen probably just keep waiting, because another comment also said 130 is not the right temperature. It should actually be 110. And that should have kind of tipped me off, like it needs to get to that, if not below it a little bit. So I think 110, 130 is kind of the range you're shooting for. So if you do it again, kind of go for that, which then leads into the final comment. Heavy bottom saucepan is what the recipe asks for. And to me, my heaviest bottom pan is my Dutch oven. But I think that might be kind of too heavy because it's like cast iron, and I think it retained heat too well, which led to the temperature not dropping down when I removed it from heat. It just kind of held on to it for too long. So I think in the future, just using a normal saucepan probably would solve a lot of those problems. Use a normal saucepan. Don't use the Dutch oven. Make sure it gets down to at least 130. I feel like if you do those things, you'll probably have a better experience than I did. However, all of that being said, it might taste fantastic. So why don't we give it a taste test and see how it turned out? All right, so let's remind ourselves how the foolproof fudge tastes. And now let's try the fudge from this week. All right, so we definitely fudged up the one this week. The sugar kind of crystalline structure is not right. The goal is to have a smaller sugar like crystal structure than the original sugar was, and that'll kind of give it a like soft, smooth, kind of creamy consistency, which I will say I did leave these out to kind of become room temperature. So the one from last week is now kind of smooth and creamy. So if you didn't kind of catch that little tip, I think I wrote it like in a text format on the last video. This one I commented on being a little, I think I used the word chalky. If you leave it out to kind of warm up a bit, it smooths out and gets like a nice texture to it. So a little tip for the one last week, let it warm up a little. But for this week, warming up is not solving any of its problems. That is the way that I prepped it was incorrect. And yeah, so these sugar crystal structures definitely are larger than they should be. So that just, comes from letting the temperature cool off enough before we start kind of agitating it. We just did it way too soon. In terms of flavor, honestly, the one that we made today is a little bit more balanced in its kind of flavor profile. It's sweet and it has like the chocolate flavor and stuff like that, but nothing is overpowering, versus the one last week was it's just like a slap in the face of sugar. Like it's very, very sweet. And this one, even though it has effectively 3 cups of sugar in it, just feels a lot more mellow, and it doesn't kind of give you that like sickening sweet sensation. It might just be me. I'm not a huge sweet guy, so maybe I'm just overly sensitive to it, but I feel like the one that we made today was a much more kind of balanced experience. The texture of it and kind of the experience that happens in your mouth, I don't know how to describe that, reminds me of like frosting almost. Like it kind of, or like frosting that you've put in the fridge, where it kind of has a little bit like a grainy texture, but then when you like put it in your mouth and it heats up, it actually kind of dissolves. It's definitely not fudge, but it's also not bad. So I don't know how we can do this kind of head-to-head battle when I feel like it's technically not fudge anymore. So it's really not a fudge versus fudge, like which one is better situation. They're almost different things at this point. So I will leave my obscure descriptions up to you to determine which one is better, or better yet, if you just give them a go yourself and find out which one you like more, because there are like little differences between them. So like making them both is kind of a fun little experience, because you know, the one from last week, double boiler, 20 ounces of chocolate, and it like the sweet condensed milk, stuff like that, versus the one that we made today. There's no double boiler, like you're just putting it straight into a pan, only 4 ounces of chocolate, but we do add a crap ton of sugar. So it makes you wonder how much sugar is in those chocolate chips, because that's 16 ounces of difference. That because it would be 8 ounces is a cup. So that difference wouldn't even be made up by the sugar. So I'm assuming this one probably has more. Well, there's a sweet condensed milk. So maybe there's the same amount of sugar. I was going to say this one might have more sugar, even though it doesn't taste as sweet. That would be kind of an interesting situation if that happened. But rambling aside, they're kind of different in their own regard. I recommend you kind of giving each a go. Obviously, the one we made today is going to be more complicated. So just be aware when you're going into it. Give it a try. See which one you like more. Maybe you can accomplish the fudge the right way. I'm obviously going to be trying this again. I won't be filming it, but I want to get fudge right. So that's going to be a fun little journey. I'm probably not going to make it because I have fudge on hand for quite a while now. So it'll probably be like 2-3 months. So I'll probably forget everything that I learned today. But on that note, bye, Mom. Still not dead. See you.